On my spiritual journey, it has been so important that I have been able to combine the work with Hakomi, which I shared in my last video. It's a body-centered therapy, along with the teachings of Joel Goldsmith, which I have been with since, oh my God, 40 years or something, I think. I had a big spiritual awakening when I still lived in Denmark because I started reading his book and I started meditating the way he suggested. So I would sit down with a Bible quote, which was from his book about meditation. So I would sit down and I would just say, I and my Father are one. It was like dropping a little pebble down. And I said that a few times, and that's when the heavens opened up, and I was in a state of total bliss, love, oneness for, I would say it was probably 2 or 3 months. So, of course, that had a huge impact on me, and it basically changed my life and my trajectory in life. And I ended up moving to America to be one of the teachers who started teaching in the same way that Joe Goldsmith did. But I don't know if there has been anybody like him because he brought in an immense amount of light back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. What happened after that, I think I've shared it on some of my earlier videos, was that somebody took over my life basically for about 5 months. And it put me, I was in this state of absolute heaven, love, oneness, amazing. And I went straight down into hell for 5 months until I finally started crawling out of this hell realm that I found myself in. And this was all due to unresolved trauma, emotions, beliefs from my childhood. So even though I had this very real spiritual opening for several months, it didn't take care of what was still unresolved in me. And that is why I shared last time about Hakomi. Hakomi has been such a lifesaver on so many ways because it really helped me access these unresolved belief systems and emotional contractions and whatnot in a way that just doing the spiritual work, it didn't do it. If it did, I would think that 3 months in this realm of love and oneness would have done it, but it didn't. And I have seen that in many other spiritual seekers where this just gets stuffed away and not dealt with. And then our lives look accordingly because it's not coming through. The light is not coming through purely. We do need to go in and clear out these things that seem so real that we have identified with them for many, many years. What I do find really important is to combine the two. Because if you just stay in the world of, deep therapy, somatic work, many things, you can also just start getting identified with that instead of liberating yourself from that separate sense from God, that separate identity, so that energy can be used to bring into realizing who we truly are. So I just want to say a few things about the teachings of Joel Goldsmith, the way I have experienced it and have taken it in and practiced still, is he talks about 3 principles, basically. He talks about the nature of God, the nature of error, and the nature of prayer. I talk a lot about this in my own words and my own experience here. But just to go over them, the nature of God is, of course, our true essence, which has nothing to do with all the pain, lack, limitations, troubles, problems, diseases. It's like it's a different realm, it's a different state of consciousness, we can call it. And with the teachings of Joel and that opening I had, I certainly did get to experience the nature of God as pure love, pure joy, pure perfection, pure everything. It was amazing. And while I was in that state, all these things didn't really touch me. It was like that didn't really exist in that state. But when I had my entry into the hell experience where somebody took over my life, that could only happen because I still had some beliefs inside, such as God doesn't want me. That's what it felt like. Unwanted, unloved. I mean, it was such an absolute shift from heaven to hell that I somehow had to make sense of it. So I hooked on to these old beliefs, and which were still living in me as if they were true. And that pulled me out of that state of heaven, oneness, and it catapulted me right back into this third dimension reality, which of course is not true or real, but it sure feels like it. So being in that state, like I say, is not necessarily enough to dissolve the illusion that we live in. The nature of God is really something we need to realize, that we are that, already are that, we always have been and always will be, when this covering is not there, telling us that we're otherwise. And in that place, I have found that so many of the Bible quotes that Joel Goldsmith used still in his tapes, were like the medicine that I needed to keep coming back to what was true. While I was going through that hell experience when this person had taken over my life, I was still very steeped in this experience, although I didn't feel the beauty of it, but there was something that has shifted in me. So everything that happened during those 5 months, I lived in that state of surrender. And I would use some of the Bible quotes that I had learned from meditating with Joel's books. And one of them I used was, "Thy grace is my sufficiency." I kind of knew what grace was by then, but that grace would suddenly disappear, as it seemed like it did in my experience, was a total mystery. But I stayed with that. So I would walk with that. When the really awful things happened, I would just, let it go and say, okay, thy grace, show me what is thy grace. And that is really, I can jump to the nature of prayer now, as Joel talks about it. So it's like being open, being an open vessel to receive and show me what is your grace. I don't experience any grace right here, but I know it's here. So I would go in and just ask and open. And there were times where I got some clear answers, which was incredibly beautiful. Sometimes the still small voice, sometimes just a deep knowing, and sometimes an obvious shift in the situation that I was in, just by being still and asking for grace to show what it is. I was not trying to change the situation. That's very different how Joel teaches it. You don't try and change anything. You basically turn away from it, and then you go and ask, well, what is true here? It's quite different than many other teachings out there. So when you start realizing that, and then other ones that have been very helpful for me have been I and my father are one, or I and my mother are one, whatever my spirit are one, it doesn't matter. As long as you have that feeling that you know, oh, this is it. And other ones that I've used a lot and lived by is she goes before me to make the crooked places straight. And in that, there was like a resting, letting go. I don't need to do it on my own because it doesn't work anyway. So there was a relaxing in that. And I think it's really wonderful that we have certain statements or words or visions that help us come back in here. So more and more we can realize who we truly are and that we are not this dream world that we are so identified with and that we experience through our five senses as our mind. So then Joel talks about the nature of error, like a mistake, right? So the nature of error is basically what he talks about is the five sense mind, what we can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and think. That is the mind. That is the five sense mind. That's the same thing. And that is the illusion. That is the error. And it is a huge leap to take from thinking you are that to starting to take steps back and observing it. You know, I've talked a lot about not touching it. Joel would talk about not reacting to it, because that's where the attachments come through our emotions and through our senses. So it's just like, okay, I am not that. Then show me what I am. So then I go right back into the nature of prayer. Nature of prayer is not telling God what we need or want or what's wrong or something like that. The nature of prayer, as Joel teaches it, and certainly how I experience it, is just be still, be open, receptive, and let it show me what is true here, because what I'm experiencing is the illusion, is the error, and there's nothing to be changed about it. I know it's different and it's not easy. So I'm not telling you, oh, just do this now. And then I've been with this for many, many years. And it's still something I need to keep alive inside of me every day. So we have the nature of God, which is pure love, pure perfection, and it's really who we are as the I am. When you say I or I am, you get an experience of something that is not our identity. So that, of course, is a very important step that we need to realize. And then there's the nature of error, which is beginning to realize that error has no power, is not the expression of the divine. Joe calls it a hypnotic suggestion. And again, it's a huge leap. Not everybody is going to resonate with this, which is fine. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. If it resonates, you might want to check it out. But it is learning that this, or realizing that this is not who I am. This is something that's experienced through the senses, through the mind. It feels real because the senses is what makes us experience it as real. So when we start getting into that a little more, then we can go to like, okay, the nature of prayer. So show me what is true here, what is real. And I was with those teachings for many, many years. But it wasn't really until I started becoming a Hakomi therapist and took the Hakomi training, which is a 2-year training. And then there's like 4 or 5 years of supervision and learning and training. And it's a huge, huge ordeal to become a certified Hakomi therapist. It's not just a weekend course or 1 year. It's big because we really need to learn how to be present with this nature of error that keeps pulling us out. And many people on the spiritual path, they try to bypass it, either because they know it's just an illusion, it's not real. But there's still, as long as we resist something or trying to avoid it, then there is still something in us that believes that it is real. And I think that's a very important part of the puzzle. When you start realizing that it is not real, or at least are willing to explore that, then we won't need to resist these feelings anymore. There will be a willingness and a curiosity and an openness to experience what we've been trying to avoid. That piece feels very important to me, because that's when, even though we may not know it yet, we are willing to find out, is this really real? These contractions in me, these beliefs in me. And it's almost like many times I'm just like, okay, well, if that's not real, I want to find out. And then there is something in me that will say, I don't want to go there. I don't want to let those belief systems run my life, believing that, there's lack, there's limitation. It's like I want to stay with the truth. But I also want to stay with the truth inside of the areas that I have been trying to avoid, reject, suppress, resist. And when I do that, and you may have had that experience yourself, when you're willing to go into, in where the monster lives, when you meet the monster just with presence or with willingness, just with willingness to go there and to feel it and explore it, that willingness, that yes, something changes. It just changes, because in reality, it is nothing. It's a suggestion. And the more we resist these suggestions, the more energy we give them and the stronger they seem. And then we're in this, we spin around in a third dimension, trying to get rid of something that doesn't even really exist as a reality, other than a belief in our minds connected with feelings in our bodies. So because I'm very strong about not doing the spiritual bypass, I find that Hakomi has really helped to not bypass it, but to bring it all home and back into the oneness, into the love. That experience that I had back in Denmark, it's very different when you just say yes to it or allow it and are willing to go there. So if that speaks to you, I want to just ask you to look at, how are you blending your spirituality with these parts that are not healed yet? And we all have them. I can still find plenty. It's like one layer at a time, sometimes easy layers. And then sometimes there's a layer that just is lingering and it drives me crazy. But really learning to say, okay, you can be here too. You can be here too. And I think I did a video on that recently. And when I do that, that part of me that says, yes, you can be there too, that feels to me that is that oneness. That is the one that does not refuse anything. You may have heard this song. See if I can sing it. The ocean the ocean refuses no river. The ocean refuses no river. And then it goes on a little bit. But when you get into becoming the ocean, You're not refusing any of these rivers of emotions, of beliefs. You're not refusing them. You're just allowing them and letting them. So saying yes to them is not that you accept them as real. It's more like it's the unhooking of the no. That's really what it is. It's just the antidote for the no. Because in duality, you have yes and no. But when you use them correctly, they cancel each other out. And what happens then is that the no to experience these feelings and the yes to, like, yeah, it's okay, you can be here, it softens. Maybe just a little bit in the beginning, but it starts softening because you're canceling it out. And then you start experiencing more of who you are, that ocean that doesn't refuse anybody or anything. You realize, oh my God, I am that ocean. When I'm not refusing or resisting, I can just rest back. And instead of putting my energy into resisting, I can rest back and become a living prayer of the ocean and let that flow and show me as prayer what is really true, what is really here. And that, of course, is for each of us to explore and find out, and more importantly, receive. Receive it without the resistance.